information of the quakes that we've had recently. We do have a crew headed out to various areas to see if there has been any damage. At this point, we have no reports of any damage. But again, many calls coming into the Eyewitness newsroom, people reporting that they felt these quakes, especially the 6.9 that happened at 8:19. We're going to continue to follow the developments here with these quakes and try to get more information for you. But as you know, there's been a lot of seismic activity over the last couple of days. The 6.4, pretty significant. I know it was felt throughout Southern California. That one was also, the epicenter was also Ridgecrest, and then several aftershocks after that. But again, the most recent quakes and aftershocks, we don't know if these are new or again attached to the initial 6.4. We had that 5.0 at 8:16, and then that 6.9 at 8:19, and then a 4.7 magnitude quake. That one out of Little Lake at 8:22. I wonder, do we have any information from Caltech? I'm talking. The 7.1 at 8:19 was downgraded to 6.9. Is that what you're telling me? I'm hearing from, yes. So again, a 5.0, a 6.9, and a 4.7. Do we have any information from Caltech? I'm talking to my producers. Okay, so we are efforting getting more information from Caltech on what these quakes mean. Again, the big question is this a new quake? Are any of these three a new quake, or do they continue to be aftershocks from the initial 6.4 in Ridgecrest? So I'm sure many people out there very concerned and on edge tonight. This 6.9 rattled our nerves here, that is for sure. And again, at this time, this is a great reminder. The quakes earlier were also a great reminder that we do live in earthquake country, and it is very important to be prepared, very important to have those emergency kits, not only at home. Now we're hearing that it's a good idea to have one in your car, one in your garage, maybe one in the closet near your front door exit. Okay, now we have a caller from the Wilshire area. His name is Bob. Hi, Bob. Can you hear me?
I can. How you doing over there?
I'm doing okay. How are you? Can you tell me what you felt and what it was like where you are?
Yeah, I just got home from dinner. We walked in. I began to put on my PJs for the night, and all of a sudden, I saw the windows kind of buckle, and the curtains start to sway. And I started to watch everything around me. I thought I was losing my balance, and went into my mom's room, and all of a sudden the whole room was starting to move, including the curtains, and the chairs and the bed started to move to the right and left. And it continued for about 20 seconds, and then all of a sudden it calmed down, and then it picked up again for about 7 or 8 seconds. And then it started to roll down slowly, and then it continued for another 10 or 15 seconds, and then it finally stopped.
Yeah, it did seem longer, didn't it? Longer
Absolutely.
than most quakes.
It was more of a rolling, more than just a shock or a big shaker.
Exactly. Did you have any damage where you are?
No damage that we can tell. We're on the 7th floor of one of the complex buildings on Wilshire Boulevard. And so far, according to the people downstairs that run the building, they haven't told us of any cracks or any gas escaping or water flooding any of the other floors. So far, we're okay.
Wow. But on the 7th floor, that's significant, significantly high.
Yeah, no, the funny thing is we could see the building across the street, which was also moving a little bit, and it's 15 stories taller than we are.
So eerie. What was going through your mind?
The first thing was, if this gets worse, how do we get out of here safely? Because we can't use the elevator. And my mother's 93, so that was an issue.
Wow.
And I thought the first thing, she was going to write me down the laundry chute.
What did you say?
In case.
You were going to do what?
I said, just have her ride piggyback down the laundry chute.
Wow.
And try to get down as fast as we could in case we had to.
Wow. Well, that's creative. That's creative. Well, I'm glad you did not have to. No, you're right. You're right.
You got to do what you got to do at the time, you know.
Absolutely. Now, you're on Wilshire. Whereabouts along Wilshire?
We're by Wilshire and Westwood, just about 4 or 5 blocks east of Westwood.
Okay. So you're okay.
And the whole corridor shook. You could see chandeliers across the street swaying on the lobbies. I mean, it was quite a movement.
That's crazy. Now, did you feel any of the earlier quakes, the 6.4 earlier?
No, because as we were approaching our building, we were driving home from dinner. So none of that appeared to feel under the tires of the car as we were driving.
Yeah. No, I guess what I meant to ask was, did you feel the one yesterday?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was an eye awakener. But this one felt like it was closer to this proximity than it was from Ridgecrest. It had more impact and a bigger kick.
Yeah.
I feel like it was the epicenter was closer to this mid-Wilshire area or somewhere in this area than Ridgecrest.
You felt this one more than you felt the one yesterday.
Makes me wonder whether it was connected to San Andreas or not.
Yes. Let me ask you this.
That's the big question.
Do you have an earthquake kit?
Unfortunately, no, we don't. We have plenty of water. We have plenty of supplies here, but they're not really gathered in like a flippy box or a flippy box. It's something we're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because we're making a trip to Costco anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure we go get one of those, pre-packed supply kits and just keep it right by the door.
Right. I think you're probably not the only person thinking about doing that at this point now, because again, we had those quakes yesterday and then these. Now, do you know, because we had one at 8:16, one at 8:19, and one at 8:22. The first was a 5.0. The biggest one was a 6.9, and then the 4.7.
That's correct.
Did you feel all of those? Did you?
Yeah, when we got home, it was about 7 minutes after 8. And as we came upstairs just to kind of go to our different rooms, all of a sudden I stood up and I thought, I didn't have that much to drink. I had one drink at dinner. So I thought maybe I was, having a second relapse, and I realized it wasn't me, it was the building. So I began to sort of go toward the doorway, and then I started to check on my mom because she was in the other room, and I thought, we better just get away from the windows and wait and see if this thing was going to calm down. And it stayed active for a good 10, 12 seconds, I will tell you. It put a little fear in me.
Yeah. Well, no, I have to agree with you
I've
again.
been through Loma Prieta.
Yeah, I have to.
I know what that feels like.
Yes. Well, we were all in the newsroom ourselves, looking at each other, wondering when it was going to stop, because it just felt like it was going and going, and it sort of ramped up and then very slowly came to a roll. I agree with you. It felt that way.
No, that's the scary part of it. That's where you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know when it's going to end.
And you don't know, what do you do first? Stay put? Do you run toward, the door, or you wait? It's like limbo land,
Right. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. I'm glad you're
My
safe
pleasure.
and you didn't have any damage. Thank you for calling in, and go get that earthquake kit. Thank you. All right, we're going to check in with Mark Cotarobas. He is joining us on the phone as well. Mark, can you tell us where you are and what you felt? Do we have Mark Cotarobas on the phone? Mark,
Giovanna,
can you hear me? Hi, Mark.
Dina, so not too far from you in Glendale, and I'm sure what you felt is just a continuous shaking. And what's kind of crazy to think about here is how far away we are from Ridgecrest and the shaking that we still get that far away, more than a 2-hour drive, and lasting seconds on end. I posted some videos of my accounts, including on Twitter, of lights in my house just swaying back and forth and clanking, just the noise of the lights kind of hitting together. And it's alarming. We, of course, knew that there was the possibility that we would have an aftershock that was bigger than the one we had the main earthquake the other day. And here it is now downgraded to a 6.9. Certainly yesterday I felt dizzy. Today, dizzy again with that shaking to the rolling motion of these two earthquakes that we've had, these bigger ones, the 6.4 yesterday, the 6.9 here today. Just kind of crazy to experience all of it. Of course, the biggest earthquakes we've had in about 2 decades.
It really is crazy. And these, again, it's that sort of feeling that you feel like something is moving, but you're not quite sure. And then you see things around you. Like, you have to really look around you and observe to see if it's an actual earthquake. That was sort of how it developed here at the station, because we were all looking at each other like, is the building really moving? Did you have any damage where you are, Mark?
Yeah, no damage. And I think that's the thing, is you look for those items like hanging lights. And again, this is for us who are a couple hours away from the epicenter. You look for those things that are hanging, things that may move a little bit more freely. And so that's what I was looking for. And so I have these lights hanging over my dining room table, and they started moving much more than the other day. And they were clanking some. Again, I posted this video on social media. I don't know if we're showing it right now on air. But again, obviously, size-wise, this was bigger than the other day. And like you mentioned, at first, you kind of question it. I'm here with my wife tonight, and she first noticed it. And I said, "Are you sure?" And then immediately, you kind of feel it. And I got a little dizzy. It happened super quick. And not to be dramatic, I mean, you really do feel it, when you're standing there, because of that rolling motion. It's not a jolt. The way that the earth is moving, you start feeling disoriented. And you take that and you put it into perspective. What are these people feeling who are right on the epicenter? It must be so incredibly different. You think about how far away we are. So no damage, not any commotion here in the neighborhood. I'm just off the 210 freeway here in Pasadena. So I don't expect any damage like there was none earlier this week. But you got to think about what's happened up in Ridgecrest tonight and Trona and those communities up there in the Mojave Desert that are so much closer to where this happened, that there's no question that there's more damage, there's more trouble, there's more concern here tonight.
That's a very, very good point, because as you mentioned, it is a bigger quake. And again, we still have not heard from seismologists from Caltech about whether this is a new quake or if it is an aftershock. But I mean, and I'm not well enough versed on quakes to know whether you can have an aftershock that's bigger than the initial quake.
Well, I'll jump in. I'll tell you this much. That just listening to Dr. Lucy Jones earlier this week, that she did say that, yes, an aftershock can be larger. There's a first earthquake, and she did say, she's on the record for this, that there can be an aftershock that can be bigger than the first earthquake. So I think with that,
Hello?
Yeah, I think we might have lost Mark. Mark, I think we lost Mark Cotorobles. We have Veronica Miracle on the line now. Veronica, what part of town are you in, and what was your experience like? Can you hear me? Veronica? Veronica Miracle, I believe we have you on the line. Veronica, can you hear me? We might have lost her. Mark, are you still with me?
Yeah, Giovanna, can you still hear me?
Yes. And now I believe I hear Veronica as well. Veronica, are you on the line? Okay. So, Mark,
this is Mark Cotorobles.
Are you talking to me?
Okay, Mark, let's talk a little bit more about the damage that we assume there might be in Ridgecrest tonight. Did you cover it earlier yesterday?
I did not, and this is breaking news, and of course this is all happening, as it's developing. So dealing with phone issues here. So I'm still on the line and for the whole time. I did not cover it myself. In fact, this happened just today. I had just gotten off work myself. And I had just gotten home during the first earthquake, the 6.4. felt dizzy at that moment, and then again felt that same feeling, that same sensation, that rolling motion that we felt here. And again, I'm in the San Gabriel Valley, so very far away from the epicenter, but not far from the station. Probably a very similar station feeling that you had there in Glendale, where our ABC studios are. And no doubt, look for those that may be playing. No doubt over you in the studio, we have all of those lights overhead. And those are the things with this kind of an aftershock and that size that even that far away, you're going to see the swaying. And I know you asked me about damage. We're not experiencing that here in my area, not hearing any commotion in the neighborhood. I've been looking outside. I mean, everything kind of seems after the shaking stopped, a normal evening. But no doubt we felt it. Everyone felt it. Everyone's on social media, posting to Twitter and Facebook, saying where they are, what they felt. But very similar, although this one was bigger, very similar motion-wise to what we felt the other day. That roll motion that seemed to continue for several seconds. It wasn't a jolt. It wasn't any kind of a jump. But that roll, it kind of makes you feel sick to your stomach.
Exactly. It almost as if you have vertigo, right? Now, okay, so we don't have Veronica on the line, but she did post on Twitter. She said, wow, scary. She's in Big Bear. She said her cabin was rocking. And then we have reports on Twitter from, let's see, from Costa Mesa, people feeling it. Ventura reporting a very long roll. That's from Cindy Mack in Ventura. The South Bay feeling it too. In Oceanside, they felt it. In Las Vegas, they felt it in Fullerton, Sherman Oaks. Santa Barbara, Troy Hooper from Santa Barbara saying that it shook the Kimpton Canary Hotel for what felt like a minute. They felt it in Lake Havasu, Arizona. They felt it in South Lake Tahoe. Fresno, that's pretty amazing. And again, we want to just clarify, it was initially reported as a 7.1, that stronger quake at 8:19, but it was downgraded to a 6.9. And Ellen Leyva reporting on Twitter, too, that when they spoke with Lucy Jones earlier, Lucy Jones had said that there was a 9% chance that this would happen, that the previous quake, being the initial quake, a 6.4, could produce an aftershock that is bigger than that 6.4. So again, we saw that tonight. And again, a series of 3 quakes. We assume they are aftershocks. The first at 8:16, a 5.0. Then at 8:19, that 6.9 that was initially reported as a 7.1. Okay, and then just to finish my thought, at 8:22, that 4.7. Now, if you can look on your screen, you can see on the left, this is video from Huntington Beach, and you can see that you can see the light fixtures above swinging. So that's swinging actually pretty much, I mean, significantly there, you can see. So that's Huntington Beach. And as we heard from the gentleman who was in the Wilshire area, he felt it too. He's near Westwood. He said he was on the 7th floor, had been there a few minutes, and then started to see the curtains move, and then light fixtures move. And he said you could see out the window other tall buildings, a 15-floor skyscraper or building. I guess it's not a skyscraper, but he could see that was sort of swaying. So all of this very, very disturbing. David Ona joining me. Did you feel it?
I didn't feel it.
You were driving?
I was in my car, and I just arrived home, and there was kind of chaos over at the house.
They felt it.
And then my family comes out and says, we just got a 7.1 earthquake. And so I immediately turned around and got back in my car and drove back to work. But when you're on the road, and I think a lot of people from Southern California can relate to this, when you're in a moving vehicle, it's harder to feel, unless your vehicle is literally being lifted up and dropped.
Exactly.
Again.
That's what happened to me yesterday. I was driving somewhere. I was actually driving on La Cienega. I didn't feel a thing, but when I got to my destination, everyone was talking about the quake that happened just 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah, but I'll give you my observances, and then covering a lot of different earthquakes and a lot of different disasters. But first of all, 6.9, 7.1 sounds enormous, but 6.9 still is a huge earthquake at the same strength or power of the Northridge earthquake. So, okay, look, we have some video to roll for you right now. This is from Dodger Stadium. Watch this. Okay, so it looks like Kiki Hernandez is up to bat, and then you can see the cameras rolling there. They're really moving, and the crowd is starting to react. Okay, let's watch as let's see how they react, because I heard the Summer League in Las Vegas, it has come to a dead halt right now because they felt it really powerfully in Las Vegas. So the Summer League is going on there. Look at the cameras moving. You hear the crowd, and they're finally kind of catching on. They're all feeling something now. This is now an earthquake. So I'm trying to, I just ran into Kurt Sandoval in the newsroom, and he said in the sports world, this is affecting the sports world across not just Southern California, but California into Nevada, because this is such a powerful quake. The waves are kind of rolling through different communities. So they're still pitching, though. They haven't stopped it yet.
And this is, I mean, it's a good point. Mark was talking about it. We were talking about earlier before you got here that really you don't even know you think, am I really feeling the building move? And you start to look around and you're just trying to observe to see if there's proof.
You're in a little bit of doubt.
Exactly. Am I crazy? Am I imagining this?
And truth be told, a sign of age for us, Giovanna, but we've both been sharing notes on dealing with vertigo.
Yes.
And I've been dealing with 6 weeks of this.
Yes.
And we're trying to figure out what's causing it. You just started to feel it.
Yes, just a few days ago.
And now these earthquakes are hitting at the same time. I was doing the parade yesterday, at the 4th of July parade at Huntington Beach. So we were on rafters. We were a little bit higher, and we were moving a bit, and we could feel it. A lot of the folks in the crowd, I would say it's 50-50. Some folks felt it. A lot of folks didn't feel it. It just depends on what they were doing and where they were.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we have Mark, and we're going to go to him in just a second. I just want to report that in La Cañada, my sister felt it. It lasted about 45 seconds, according to them, and it was long and rolling, as we keep hearing from various people. The kids didn't freak out too much.
So when it comes to earthquake talk, the longer you feel the rolling of the ground, the more powerful likely the earthquake is. Mark Cota-Robles can join us right now as well. He is on the phone. And Mark, how long did you feel the shaking?
Yeah, that's probably an indication of what happened. This was a little bit longer than what we had the other day with the 6.4. So this was downgraded from the 7.1 to the 6.9, but you did feel it for a little bit longer. It's hard to tell. I mean, I don't time it, but probably went on for 20-plus seconds as far as the actual moving. I posted a video to some of my social sites, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of lights. I have my dining room table, some hanging lights. They're in like some glass jars, and so they were clanking, moving, swaying, and as Giovanna had mentioned, you question yourself. You don't want to overreact. Are we having that earthquake? And because you kind of feel it moving, and you go, wait a minute, what's going on?
Right.
I look to the lights because those are hanging, and they started moving. They increased. So definitely over 20 seconds. That would be the straight answer for you.
Not to reveal too much, Mark, but what area do you live?
The first one, the 6.4. I probably felt that the other day for 10 seconds shaking. But both times you mentioned the vertigo issue. I mean, I did feel dizzy both times. I mean, because of the rolling motion. And I mentioned earlier, a few minutes ago, during our coverage here, that you got to think we're so far away in Los Angeles County, a couple hours away from the Ridgecrest area, and that we're still feeling the effects.
Right.
I feel it. I see the things moving. Imagine what they're dealing with. We saw the damage already, the new homes that are falling today, some of those mobile homes damage, the groceries. You know that again, so there's continue to clean up. Dr. Lucy Jones was a good. Something like this would.
We're having.
Yeah, I'm losing. I'm so sorry. I don't think
hearing
he can.
Mark. I believe we have Josh Haskell on the line too.
Quickly though, I want to read something. I'm getting some information from Dr. Lucy Jones. I actually interviewed her for quite a long time earlier today, and have been able to talk to her. Oh, there she is, right there. In fact, although that might be video. So she basically now says she's kind of redefining what we talked about yesterday, and that was a 6.4. Now it's considered a foreshock. So a foreshock, like an aftershock, it comes before the main event.
Yes.
So now this is being called the main event, this being a 6.9.
So the 6.4 yesterday was a foreshock
to what just happened right now. So that is the main event, unless there's another event that's even more powerful.
Let's hope that's not the case.
But it's on the same fault in the same area, according to her. So that's basically how they start to define what has been happening. So that was a foreshock. We saw a number of other foreshocks. And this is the event.
Right. Let's go to Josh Haskell before we lose him. Josh, where are you? And tell us what you felt.
Yeah, I just gotten home in West Hollywood, and I was actually in Ridgecrest all day yesterday covering, and I just cannot stop thinking about knowing what the conditions are there. And I know that they had spent all day yesterday just trying to get back into their homes and get power on and clean up the stores because so much infrastructure was really out of commission all day. And now that they're dealing with an even bigger quake, that's what I'm thinking about. But here in the West Hollywood area, it just felt, I didn't even actually feel the quake yesterday, and I was in the same area. But the one today, we definitely felt it. We're on the 5th floor of an apartment building, and it felt like it was shaking for almost 40 seconds. And we just went into the doorway, my wife and now just kind of trying to assess everything. And obviously, it's David, Giovanna, as you guys have been reporting, trying to get information out of Ridgecrest and other parts that are closer to this epicenter.
Right. Yeah, and then again, so we were starting to talk about this, that the length of shaking, and I got to talk to Lucy Jones about that earlier today. I was telling her my observation yesterday was that as I was sitting there in the parade and I was on these rafters, so I was a little bit more sensitive to what the crowd was feeling, and I felt several seconds of shaking and movement, which told me, and I haven't even said this on the air, I felt that this must be a really powerful quake. It was probably a long way away, but the fact that the ground was moving for so long gives you some indication of the strength of the earthquake. She agreed with that assessment. And to give you some idea, if you were sitting under the epicenter in Northridge, which was also a 6.9, when that struck in 1994, they said basically the ground shook, but severely shook for 9 seconds. It might have been extended further out that you go, but 9 seconds. Compare that to, let's say, a 9.0 that hit Japan in 2011, in March of 2011. Depending on where you were in Japan, the ground shook for 3 to 6 minutes.
Wow.
That's why that was such a devastating earthquake, and it caused a huge tsunami, which we all saw.
Right.
And it is a different type of fault line, but the ground shaking and the length of time the ground shakes gives you an indication of how powerful that quake was. Mark and Josh both felt that ground shaking for quite some time,
right.
And that gave us some idea that this is a really strong quake.
And I'm hearing from Playa Vista, friends were at the movies. At first, everyone sat during the first 10 to 15 seconds, and then the quake kept going. It didn't stop, and then everyone apparently stood up and very orderly walked out of the Spiderman screening there. This was at the Cinemark in Playa Vista, and they gave people passes to return, obviously, but for those who wanted it. But
Hal Kenfer, he's checking in. He's our security expert. He's saying that he felt in Long Beach for a little bit less than a minute. So, but still, a minute. That's a tremendously
that's a long time.
And
that is a long time.
When it comes to earthquakes, that's moving.
You just hold your breath, and you're just waiting to to see when it'll stop. We have Veronica Miracle on the line. She felt it in Big Bear. Veronica, can you describe it for us?
Well, Giovanna and David, it was so intense. So it started off kind of like we're looking around like, okay, is this an earthquake? And then it really started shaking. We're in a cabin that's elevated on pilings, so kind of like stilts. And we could see and feel the cabin just moving back and forth and creaking the wood. And so all of us, I'm with my siblings, we kind of went into the bathroom area because it's a 2-story cabin and there's like a lot of open space. But all of the frames on the walls were shaking back and forth. And then in the last, I would say 20 minutes, we felt about 3 or 4 aftershocks. So it's been really actually kind of terrifying.
Right, and it gives you the extent, an idea of the extent of how many people are affected by this one and the increase in power. So you're up there in Big Bear. How long did you say did you feel the rumbling and the shaking was?
Okay, we have Lucy Jones.
Los Angeles area.
Let's listen in to
Okay.
My
Lucy
expectation
Jones.
is that Ridgecrest is having a pretty difficult time tonight. It is a foreshock.
Oh, man.
Becomes bigger than the main shock. We changed the name and call the first one a foreshock. So everything up before the 7.1 would be considered a foreshock to this earthquake. This is an earthquake sequence. It will be ongoing. It is clearly a very energetic system sequence, so there's no reason to think that we can't have more large earthquakes. The largest aftershock on average to a 7.1 would be about a magnitude 6. So another magnitude 6 similar to yesterday's earthquake in size would be not surprising to anybody. At this point, we don't have a lot more information. You can see on the map over here where the locations of the earthquake and aftershock are. The blue are all earthquakes that happened before the 7.1, the last 24 hours. And so you can see this basically happened at the end of the zone that had moved previously. We're now seeing a few earthquakes way up to the northwest, so we know the fault's extending at least that far. It may very well come all the way back down to where the 6.4 was. We can guess at the size, the length of the fault from the magnitude. A 7.1 is going to be 40, 50 kilometers, something like 25, 30 miles long. And what we're seeing between the main shock and those ones up to the northwest is about 15 miles. So probably it involved the lower part too.
Okay, and just to add very briefly, actually when this earthquake occurred, we were on a call with geologists from the U.S. Geological Survey and California Geological Survey who were out in the field. And so they are going to go out and start looking and seeing what actually happened to the ground. The earthquake that we had yesterday did cause some surface rupture. I would highly expect that the earthquake we had tonight is also going to break up to the ground surface. So we will be getting information from them hopefully later this evening, and we'll relay that information to you folks as we can.
Talk about the
All right.
sequence ongoing.
So-
Sequence ongoing. Typically, how long is that ongoing?
A magnitude 7 usually has aftershocks that last for years.
Yeah, so the expectation is we're going to have aftershocks tonight. It's going to continue on. We will continue, or we'll come back in about 30 minutes as we get some more information and have a chance to analyze the data. Thank you very much.
Super quickly, how much bigger is a 7.1 than a 6.4?
What's the logarithm of 0.7? It's about 10 times.
Yeah, good.
Yes, and that's the time to stop. That's the information we have right now. We have a magnitude and the location. Hopefully we'll have a bit more soon.
More questions, guys. We're gonna come back at 9:30. We're gonna come back at 9:30.
7.1 is still the number?
7.1 magnitude, yes.
Okay, we're getting conflicting information. Initially, that strong quake at 8:19 was reported as a magnitude 7.1. Then we heard reports that it was downsized to a 6.9, and now we're hearing from Lucy Jones. She's referring to it as a 7.1. So we're going to try to get some clarification for you on that. But at this point, Lucy Jones is considering that a 7.1. And what was interesting, what I thought was very interesting, she called this an energetic sequence. She's saying that another magnitude 6 quake would not be surprising, and we could get several more.
Right. Usually, the aftershock is often as powerful, not as powerful, but it's a little less powerful because it could be very close to as powerful as the main earthquake. And we've seen that a number of times. When I went to Japan after the 9.0, we got hit with a 7.1 while I was there. And that's really, really strong, and that's just simply an aftershock.
Right. The other thing she said that was interesting, she said the 6.4, many people felt that 6.4 yesterday. This one today, the 7.1, is 10 times stronger than that 6.4. So she mentioned the folks in Ridgecrest having a difficult time tonight. I can't imagine, and I'm sure we're sending crews out there to see what the damage is, but I can't imagine. They must be just on edge and very tense at this point.
Another thing to consider, and this was the case in Haiti, and Haiti is especially bad because of their infrastructure and the way they build their buildings, not nearly as good as we do here in the United States. But with every aftershock or maybe main shock, like in this case, when a building is compromised, and if the ground shakes again, it makes those buildings more compromised or even brings them down. So if there's older structures, if there's mobile homes, you know, we showed you throughout the day today a number of mobile homes that had extensive damage from the foundation or just collapsed. And then if there are others out there that are already compromised from the 6.4, then whatever happened tonight, they could go down. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why during an energetic event like we just are feeling right now, as Lucy Jones described it, they want you to stay out of buildings, especially buildings that are showing cracks or some challenges to the ground shaking, because if you're in those buildings and the ground shakes again, they could come down on you. Right. Another reason why so many people ran to the streets and slept in the streets in Haiti after the earthquake.
Right. They did mention that because Ridgecrest was built in the 1940s, that some of those structures at least had some earthquake protection.
Right.
So there was that. But that is a good point you're bringing up tonight, that the fact that they've
yeah, retrofitting. Thanks to retrofitting,
yes,
things are better and can handle this.
But it's a good point that after several quakes, the buildings become more fragile.
They're still vulnerable to going down.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a few people to get to. I'm sorry, Carper.
Leticia Waters is standing by right now.
Yes.
Leticia, where are you?
Actually, I'm in my home in Riverside. You know, I've got a little mixed in my ear, so if they can take me down a bit. So I can tell you, I just interviewed a gentleman from Trona. He's somebody I met yesterday, David Surlis. He was telling me, along with pictures that he was sending me, about just some of the damage that he was seeing in Trona, toppled brick fences and big.
We have. I'm sorry, Leticia. We have lights moving in our studio right now. And I'm wondering if we just got hit with another major aftershock. We're gonna look into this. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we're hearing our lights moving around. I just want to put that out there, folks. If you're feeling something, let us know. Okay, Leticia, carry on.
No problem. So I was speaking with a gentleman from Trona who I met yesterday. He's sending me pictures, and he says right now residents are fleeing Trona. There's a line on State Route 178 of people just heading out of town. They've lost power after getting it back yesterday. And he says the intense shaking has really scared folks. He sent me a really good picture of the road that buckled, actually, on the 178 Trona Road, right at the railroad track. Hopefully we can get those pictures up to you soon. But he says that people are, at this moment, a line of cars just fleeing Trona to get out of the area after that intense earthquake.
Forgive me.
Yeah, we can't. Are you saying Corona or Trona?
Trona.
Okay, and that is in the Ridgecrest area?
Yeah, it's a town about maybe 8 or 11 miles away.
Okay, and are you referring to the Highway 178? Is that the one that was repaired very quickly, about within an hour after that crack appeared? That's the one you're talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, and that's damaged again?
Yeah, damaged again, but instead of like a line across the road, this one is around the center divider. You see the center divider, half of it is down. So there's an uneven, like one's up and the other's down.
Well, that's...
And I apologize that my voice is choppy, but I'm hearing myself in the ear as I'm talking to you.
Right, it's okay, but that's valuable information. And Trona, T-R-O-N-A, it is a town that is in that valley there that was affected by yesterday's earthquake, and then, as Leticia just revealed, severely affected today. So we're going to look into that. And thank you so much for Leticia for giving us some more information on what you're hearing. And of course, stay with us and let us know what else you find out there. We're going to go to Miriam Hernandez right now. And Miriam, where are you? Oh, there you are. You are live.
Okay.
Miriam,
yes. Hi. Okay, Dr. Lucy Jones just spoke here along with Dr. Rob Graves about what we have experienced here. Some quakes still happening as we speak. We've been watching on the shake alert map as they roll through. What she told us is that the latest quake, the latest large quake, was a 7.1. That's the data that they've analyzed, 7.1, and that apparently is the main shock at this point. That the other shaker that we felt yesterday, 6.4, that was apparently a foreshock. They spoke at length about the calculations and the possibility that there could be a larger shake. Well, that certainly has happened. How much bigger is a 7.1 than a 6.4? Logarithmically, well, Dr. Jones says that is about 10 times stronger. So exceptionally high. A very uncomfortable night for the people in the Owens Valley. You can see up there on the map the dots. Those red ones are the ones that have happened in the last hour, and they do extend in a different pattern than the ones that we saw previously. All those on the blue cluster, one over the other, those were from a day ago, but now we see that area stretch. She says that the fault now appears to be longer than originally thought by several kilometers. There is going to be another briefing ahead, but I'm going to see if I can corral one of these other seismologists and tell us. Can you tell me anything more about the fault where this activity occurred? Dr. Jones was pointing to. Oh, our map went away.
She wanted to put the.
We're working on the map here. We've got.
Well,
the latest quake, the latest tremor. Can you tell us about these? What we're seeing here?
Yeah, we'll look at a better map for you. Can you show the fault map again?
We're going to show the fault map again. Just stand by.
Miriam, can you hear us? Can Miriam hear us?
Yes, I can. We're doing this. Yes, I can hear you.
I understand. No, I know you're waiting for something, but can you also at some point inquire about the early warning system? I know that there were some questions after yesterday's quake, it not being in place or the app not working, but can you get some clarification on that?
The app was working. The app was working. Yes. The app was working. Initially, it appeared that people did not get an alert and that it may have been the fault of the system. It was not a fault. That's exactly what was supposed to happen. The map was triggered, the alert was triggered, but it is designed with certain thresholds. Those thresholds prevent unnecessary alerts for lower level movement that would not create any damage in LA County. So they don't want people alerted for damage when nothing's going to happen. The tremors that were felt yesterday were not big enough to cause damage in Los Angeles County. So that is why. Oh, no, go ahead, Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones is back. So we're going to go and wait for her to update us. Okay. I'm going to put the microphone here for you.
We'll go ahead and start up again.
This is Dr. Lucille.
Okay. We just lost our signal.
We'll try to get that back.
Yes.
But I think there is tremendous activity going on right now, Giovanna. They're feeling things moving again in the booth. Let's listen in.
We're still getting the very beginning of the information, and we're finding our system's pretty overloaded. I think an important thing up here is the shake map that's just been shown. So we had a magnitude 7.1. It's just about an hour, 50 minutes ago. And can we go back to the shake map? Where is it? Okay, here. Notice that there's red areas. That's implying a quite high shaking intensity. Intensity is different than magnitude. There's one number to represent the size of the earthquake. Yesterday, the biggest was a 6.4. Today, the biggest is a 7.1. Intensity is what you feel. So we have here a map of what the shaking intensities were up around the Ridgecrest area. Notice that they are going into red. That is intensity 9. The 6.4, we only got up into orange. Intensity 8 had been the maximum. So this was definitely stronger shaking, and unfortunately it looks to be the pretty high levels of shaking there in Ridgecrest. 4.6, okay.
How far was this from the main shock yesterday?
All right, so remember, earthquakes don't happen at points. So, all right, they're planes. The 6.4 actually seemed to have happened on 2 planes. All right, let's go back to the, yeah, thanks. Oh, hard to see it now, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. There's a northwest striking surface and there is a southwest striking surface. This one, as what we can tell at this point, it looks like it happened on the northwest striking feature because we saw several. Notice the red boxes, the up at the northwest corner of the big box. That's showing us aftershocks happening northwest of the main shock, and that implies that's the direction that the fault went. Here we're seeing it a little. Yeah, we're still struggling to get up a good figure.
Right. But the epicenter of the 7.1 in relation to 6.4.
Okay, the epicenter of the 7.1 is at the northwest end of the fault that moved in the 6.4. Now, the 5.4 aftershock this morning extended that fault. What we saw from the main shock, from the 6.4. The 5.4 extended it a bit to the northwest, and this 7.1 seems to have extended it even farther to the northwest. So the fault is growing. We ruptured a piece in the first earthquake. We ruptured a bit more in the 5.4 this morning, and we're rupturing more now. It is moving towards the northwest, away from the metropolitan area, as far as we can tell.
And a 5% chance this will go even further.
Right. This is another earthquake. Everyone has a chance. I'm trying to think if we've ever seen a situation with a 6.4 or 7 and then something even bigger, and I can't think of one. Not that it isn't possible, but I can't give you an example where it's happened before. We've had foreshocks to a lot of other earthquakes. The Landers earthquake, which is a 7.3. 2 months earlier, there was a 6.1 called the Joshua Tree earthquake. That's far enough apart that we don't usually use the word foreshock. We call it a pre-shock. There was a 3.8 a couple of hours before the 7.3. In 1987, the Superstition Hills earthquake, 6.6, was preceded the day before by a 6.2. So that's why we keep on saying 1 in 20 chance. Well, this is the 20.
Lucy, can you talk about the 6.4 yesterday and how it relates to the 7.1? Which was the main quake, which is the breach?
Okay. By definition, because the 7.1 is the largest, we give it the name main shock. So yesterday or an hour ago, we were calling the 6.4 the main shock. It has now had an aftershock that's bigger than itself, and so we changed the name. And the 6.4 is now a foreshock, and that really large aftershock has become the main shock. As far as we can tell, those names, foreshock, main shock, aftershock, are semantic. There are tools for trying to describe what's going on. But when you have a sequence going on, every earthquake makes another earthquake more likely. And that's what we're seeing right here.
And you're already having aftershocks. Can you talk about how many, how big?
Well, all right, so just look right down here on the lower part. Since the 7.1, we are only seeing basically the 4s and 5s showing up. We've had 1, 2, 3, about 10.
It's Lucy, 5.7.
Oh, 5.7. Okay, so we have an earthquake that's already begun up north, just slightly to the northwest of the main shock. Our early warning system is saying 5.7 with 26 seconds till it gets here. The one that was a 4.9, we felt. So this, assuming that the magnitude isn't really misestimated, my guess will be we'll feel this as it comes through. In about 12.
10 seconds.
And do we expect this magnitude of aftershocks throughout the rest of the evening?
Well, yeah, the largest aftershock is likely to be a 6.
Well, let's wait. Here we go.
We should be feeling it now.
Huh?
Very.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is.
Feel it? Yeah.
That was the phone ringing.
That was less than I felt from the one that was labeled as 4.9. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
All right. So clearly we're a long ways away from the earthquake. We're still, can we feel it? Remember that the people in Ridgecrest are going through a lot worse than this. We already had damaged houses and structure fires out of the first earthquake. This is going to have been more intense shaking. Okay. This came through just as a 3.5.
And Lucy, this was all on the same fault line as the 6.4?
Well, yes, the same fault system. It does appear to have multiple strands to it. We've already seen the 2 perpendicular ones. I think it got the
magnitude.
The magnitude wrong, because, yeah, unless it hasn't come through yet. So,
Dr. Jones, can you explain the shake alert again? Because some people just got the initial report that it, quote unquote, wasn't working. Can you explain again that?
Let's let the USGS handle that one.
So the system worked.
Oh, that was a 5.1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the shake alert system worked both on the USGS side and on the shake alert LA side. The reason why alerts or notifications didn't go out to LA County is that the threshold for shaking was set above what the estimated shaking would be. So it was just the way that the system was designed. And in fact, the same thing happened again tonight. My understanding, the alerts did not go out on Shake Alert LA. A magnitude that was estimated with a early warning system was 6.2. So the initial magnitude estimate was too low. Consequently, the intensities were below that threshold. So the system is not perfect, but again, what was experienced here in Pasadena, LA area, these were not damaging ground motions. What's going on up in Ridgecrest, those are damaging ground motions. So those folks are really feeling it.
Robert, what's the chance of another large quake like this, or even larger tonight?
Well, as Dr. Jones had said, there's a 5% chance that this could be followed by an even larger quake. Well,
the number of 5% is usually for a few days. The most likely time is within a day, which is what, of course, we just saw, 30 hours or something, 36 hours.
Yeah, and in fact earlier that you don't recall of any size earthquake sequence where the 7.1 was followed by a greater earthquake.
Oh, no, I just don't remember one that's had this in California that's had that series. There are places elsewhere in the world. There was a magnitude 8.5 that was a foreshock to a 9.5 in Chile. So there is nothing about the magnitude that says it can't be a foreshock.
Right, but in California, along this, in the seismicity of this state, you've never seen anything follow a 7.1.
Boy. Yeah, but that doesn't mean
we haven't. No. We have in Nevada. We have in Nevada the
Yeah.
Fairfield earthquakes.
Yeah. The takeaway here, though, is that as we have just seen between yesterday and today, quakes that we say are main shocks can't actually be foreshocks to larger quakes. So.
And we won't know till it does or doesn't happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a small percentage.
Is 7.1 the same depth for the most part as the 6.4?
Yeah, well, it's 17 kilometers.
Yeah, so the epicenter is a little bit deeper. We do have geologists out in the field. We haven't got reports back, but they'll be able to go out and document.
But also remember,
you said 5 to 10 miles.
So that's the 10 miles, right? It's 10 miles down, whereas the one yesterday was more like 6 or 7 miles down. However, a bigger earthquake also involves a larger fault, so it still may very well. Probably this is coming to the surface.
Yeah.
Is there
what you're really worried about is, are we going to trigger something outside of this region?
Right.
Probably not. Okay.
Why?
Because we're too far away. The ability to trigger another earthquake is very spatially defined. So the most likely place to trigger it is at the same fault. As you go away with distance, it becomes much less likely.
How far is that from the San Andreas?
It's quite a ways.
Quite a ways. It's not even on that figure. It's over 100 miles to the San Andreas from this location.
And the Garlock?
The Garlock fault is a lot closer.
Yeah.
And the Garlock fault is another long fault. If we were going to be triggering something really big, the Garlock might be a source for it. This is sort of like when landers happened near the San Andreas. And we said, if we're going to set off something bigger, there's only the San Andreas around. Of course, it didn't happen. But it was a possibility, a low probability possibility. The Garlock, luckily, really runs through some of the most isolated parts of California.
You said yesterday there were 2 faults making this L pattern, so there was that lower little leg.
Right.
Now the top part, that's the part that's extended.
It's the northwest part that's extended and grown, whereas the southwest striking one doesn't seem to have had more earthquakes.
Is that a surprise at all to you that this fault system was capable of this kind of earthquake?
No. There was a magnitude 7.5 in 1872 in the Owens Valley. There have been lots of 6s. There's this whole series. When I said Nevada, 1915 and 1954, and I don't have the magnitudes in my head this time, but they were 7s. There were series of earthquakes with several events within them of 6 to 7. In Mammoth in 1980, there were 4 magnitude 6.5 that happened in one sequence over about 10 days. This part of California is characterized by these type of groups of earthquakes that there might be several that end up larger. The first one is often not the biggest one. Knowing that which one is the biggest one means waiting till we see that we aren't getting another one.
When was the last time we had something sizable on Garland?
Not in the historic record. Prehistoric.
This is extending about 25 miles, you said earlier?
That's an approximate guess off of looking at these figures, which are having trouble coming up.
The northwestern fault, is that the one that's moving into China Lake?
The southwest striking one is the one that goes sort of from China Lake down to Ridgecrest. The northwest is going up through the China Lake Navy base.
I know that there has been trouble trying to get geologists onto base. Have you guys made any progress on that?
Yeah, actually, our geologists have contacted the Navy and are able to get on the base with some limited access. Now, that was prior to tonight's event. So presumably, well, I would expect that there may be further damage on the naval base. We don't know yet. I haven't gotten reports. But my suspicion is that the geologists are going to be able to get out there very quickly and look at potential rupture. The other comment here, just following on what Dr. Jones was saying, when we have events that where a main shock then becomes a foreshock, typically the triggering is relatively close, and that's actually what we saw here. These two earthquakes are relatively closely located, so the triggering typically does not happen at a great distance. More typically, it's close by.
I can't think of any example where we've seen this type of foreshock triggering that isn't within just a matter of a few kilometers. I mean, the famous widespread one was Elmore Ranch and Superstition Hills, a 6.2 that was on a southwest striking fault and then set off a 6.6 on a northwest striking fault, sort of like this. The epicenter of Elmore Ranch was up here, but the fault extended right down to the Superstition Hills. And we were seeing aftershocks pounding at the Superstition Hills fault up until the time that the earthquake happened, the main shock happened. And we've got a similar situation here where we've had aftershocks along this fault. And then we had the 5.4 breaking through a bit towards the northwest, and now we've had it again. And we now see more aftershocks up to the very northwest end. And chances are we stop now. It's possible that we'll continue to extend up to the northwest.
Right, but you said for a 7.1 magnitude quake, you could expect an aftershock sequence that lasts for over a year.
Yes. All right, so the 7.3 Landers earthquake, the last magnitude 5 to that 1992 earthquake happened in 1998, so 6 years after the main shock. We should be expecting to record earthquakes here for a long time.
Can you describe that terrain of where this aftershock was, or where this main shock was?
Well, the terrain is very isolated. It's desert, not a lot of population. So actually, in a sense, for being able to get people out there and look at it, there's a good opportunity. And also because it's not densely populated, the chance of having damage to structures and injuries is much lower. But it is still very, it's hard rock. These are faults that are breaking through hard rock. That's why they create these waves that we feel strongly, even down here in Los Angeles. There we go. Now we got
one more, actually. Can we do? Or?
Yeah, we're now getting some of our graphics up. So, Lucy, if you want to describe this, and I can kind of point.
Right. So the blue means it happened more than an hour ago, but less than 24 hours ago. You can actually see some yellow underneath because we're more than 24 hours since the main shock. But all those blue dots are the aftershocks over the last 24 hours, and that's the red ones are within the last hour. So the main shock has already turned blue, and that's right there. The epicenter of the 6.4 was basically at that corner, and we think ruptured, well, clearly ruptured to the southwest, probably also some rupture to the northwest in the same event, maybe in the aftershocks afterwards. Then the 5.4 aftershock was, the one this morning was located right in there, moved the fault a little farther. Then we have the 7. And now look at that cluster up to the northwest. We think, right now we aren't getting many of our aftershocks recording yet. The system's pretty strung out. And pretty sure that is a continuous aftershock zone, and that would mean that's the extent of the fault.
Yeah,
and just the length of the fault, a magnitude 7.1, we would expect that it's probably at least about 25 miles long. And that would imply probably that whole length from where the 6.4 happened up to where those aftershocks are up in the corner.
That says China Lake up there.
This is
the red is.
Yeah, so the naval.
Oh yeah, right. The Naval Air Station is that whole area. So this is all within the Naval Air Station. There's a fault system. So we see all these little faults on the ground. Rather than naming each little piece separately, it's been called the Little Lake Fault System. And so that's, these are.
So the length of the fault itself has been defined by this 7.1 earthquake?
No, it could. We don't know.
You don't know it.
Right, and if you look at the mapping that we can see there, and one of the things we can do if we got a bit of a break and found some stuff, we could pull out.
We'll give you a break soon.
We'll try to get out the state geology map and really see the detailed mapping that's been done in here beforehand. But notice that there's this little string of, you see where the cursor's showing you all those little faults going up to the northwest, and it was not mapped as a through-going fault. It was little pieces up through here, and now we have more little pieces farther up. So no, we can't say, oh, the fault's used up. It would, but most likely, if we were to see more going on, I would think it more likely that we're heading to the northwest than turning around and coming to the south again.
So the surface rupture, how close would that be to the epicenter? I mean, are they tied together?
They are the same. The epicenter is only the place where the fault started to move. It is not the location of the earthquake. The earthquake happens over the whole fault surface. And just like if I were going to try to tear this, I can't do this. What I would do is I'd start a tear here and then rip down this way. And this would be the epicenter. This would be the fault surface. The earthquake's happening over this whole fault. So we think that what's happening here is a fault about 25 miles long. We started at the end, the part that hadn't broken before the 7.1. Potentially it ruptured in both directions. About 80% of earthquakes are unilateral rupture in one direction, and about 20% rupture in both directions.
So on the 178, there was a left lateral slip of about 6 inches. Could we expect that to grow?
That's actually, the left lateral one is down on the southwest striking fault. So down here, and it's not at all clear that part has moved in the 7.1.
So do you know what kind of earthquake it was yet?
What do you mean by kind of earthquake? It's a strike slip. It's strike slip. It's strike slip. Yeah, that's something that we can get from the seismic records, and it's very clearly strike slip.
Yeah, and just to follow on with that, the event yesterday was left lateral strike slip, which actually released some compression on what we think is the fault that ruptured this evening in the 7.1. This event presumably is a right lateral strike slip, but basically motion horizontally. And again, with this magnitude and this length, the expectation of having surface rupture is much greater. And by being able to go out and actually measure, in a 7.1, I'm trying to think back for landers, there was up to, 10 feet of displacement.
18 feet was the maximum displacement in landers.
18 feet of displacement.
Meaning if the fault ran between you and me, right now we're looking at each other, after the earthquake, I would be 18 feet farther down there.
Yeah.
There was a school of thought a while ago that the seismicity of the state was moving straight up, as opposed to San Andreas. And you had landers, you had Hector Mine, now you have this. Does this add to that academic debate?
Right, that debate was not on human timescales. That was saying we were moving over there in the next few million years.
But and actually, let me turn that around a little bit. I think these events are a reminder that we can have earthquakes anywhere in Southern California. And on a human time frame, as Dr. Jones is explaining, an event like today's could occur in the LA basin. It could occur down south in the San Diego area. That's just because we live in an area that has many, many active faults.
Right, but if you have an earthquake fault, an earthquake of 7.1 magnitude, 150 miles away from the major metropolitan area, and you suffer damage here, you're in big trouble.
Was there damage in the Los Angeles area?
My point is, we get calls, and we ask for it, and there's a report of a power outage or somewhere. The region has to sustain a 7.1 150 miles away.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for the most part, the region has. I think the incidences are probably somewhat isolated. I would be very surprised if there was much widespread impact in the Los Angeles area. But clearly up near the epicentral region, the Ridgecrest area, those folks are having to deal with a lot right now. We haven't gotten any direct reports here, but I'm sure there's lots of damage, and they are probably dealing with aftershocks as well.
You're waiting to hear from your geologists. What information will they provide?
Well, they're going to be out in the field as soon as they can and as best they can. Obviously, it's nighttime right now. They may be limited. This is the Naval Air Weapons Station. Okay, so there's unexploded ordnance issues. They may not be able to get out there at night. When they get out there, they'll have to be escorted. That all those logistics are something they're going to determine.
But what they're looking for is finding a fault where we find that motion that's happened. Because we are seeing, with our seismometers, we see these waves coming off of here, and we calculate back they're probably coming off of this surface. When we get those field geology, it's like this fault has moved. And so it's ground truth.
We know that the Navy
and
is testing conditions out there. Is there any chance at all that anything underground from the Navy may have triggered any of this?
No.
Look, we've set off pretty large nuclear blasts without ever setting off an earthquake. The largest earthquake, I think, set off by the largest nuclear blast is like a magnitude 2.
And the hypocenter for this one is down at 10 miles beneath the surface.
Is there anything about this earthquake that's surprising at all to you?
The size?
Well, no, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, as Dr. Jones was explaining yesterday after the 6.4, there was a possibility of having a larger event. And sure enough, we did. And, the mechanics of these two faults, the conjugate faulting, actually makes a lot of sense from a geologic or scientific perspective. So I would say no, there's not really any surprises that we've seen so far.
What can you learn from it?
Well, hopefully, number one, learn a little bit more about how earthquakes work. Number two, I think, there's teams out there looking at damage, how buildings responded. Every earthquake is a chance to learn what worked, what didn't work, and make improvements.
And obviously, a better understanding of earthquake triggering. Hopefully, we'll be able within this, because we have, I can go and rattle off all these previous earthquakes where we've seen one trigger the other. The recordings we have of those earthquakes are primitive compared to what we have now, and we don't really know all of what the mechanisms were in this earthquake. With the system that we put in place to do early warning, we now have hundreds and hundreds of stations that are out there giving us much clearer pictures of what's going on the fault. So now we're going to be able to see with much greater resolution than we've had in the past, what part of which fault moved and how did the pattern progress and of course there's always the hope that we'll find something that's different about the foreshocks.
Yeah, and let me just add,
we haven't.
let me just add, in terms of learning, the shake alert system, which has been put in place in the last few years and is constantly being tested. This is an excellent test case for that system. We'll be able, in the coming days, be able to analyze how the system performed. Are improvements required? I suspect yes, maybe in terms of estimating the magnitude. So that's another point where we'll be able to build on this event and make some progress.
I'm seeing a report from USGS that this fault is so shallow it was technically above ground, listed as a line on a violent mortality intensity scale. What is that?
Not something coming from a scientist?
Yeah, I don't know if that, I doubt that's coming from the USGS. So earthquakes obviously cannot occur above ground. Yeah.
All right, there are some times where our location might show up as being a negative depth, and that means something went wrong in how we located it. Yeah. The depth is actually much harder to construct.
All right.
All right, we lost that signal.
We gleaned some fantastic information from
down,
Dr.
because we don't have
Jones.
anything
Okay, let's
below.
see
The
if...
depth of this earthquake is similar to what you've seen before, historically in this region.
Yes. In this region, we've had somewhat deeper faults. The area is, that idea of, redirecting the San Andreas. We are seeing this area opening up. It is what the geologists call the basin and range system. So you have the big fault that's on the side of the Sierra Nevada, and then we have the faults that are forming all of the different ranges that go out through Nevada, all the way out to the Wasatch in Utah. So everything between the Wasatch and here is called the basin and range. So it's an area with lots of faults that's spreading out, and some of them happen by faults that move up and down, and some of them happen by these horizontal ones sort of squeezing out along the way. And the rate at which they happen summed up as about 10 to 20% the rate of what we see on the San Andreas. And the geological discussion, is that because it's going to eventually take over from the San Andreas, or is that some other sort of millions of years, right? Yeah. Not on our time scale, but it's still, we sometimes call this a complex plate boundary. 2/3 of the motion happens on the San Andreas. The rest of it gets smeared out through other faults. And this is the 10 to 20% that's smeared out to the east.
You said the Wasatch, but do we see these kind of events in Utah? Or?
Yeah. Well, the farther east you go, the less frequent they are. But we're pretty sure there are magnitude 7s under Salt Lake City about once every 1,000 years. And here along through this region, it's also, as I said, I think 1915 and 1954 and 1872 were all at close to magnitude 7, coming up through somewhere between here and up to Reno.
Okay, about 5 more questions.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about...
I've got a question about the conjugate system here. The fact that these two are conjoined, does that add any energy to it's just happenstance that these two are connected?
As far as we can tell, actually, the better picture we get of the earthquakes as we put in more instruments, the more often we see multiple faults in the events. We think they probably really were. Most of them are like this, that we're just finally being able to resolve it.
Yeah. Actually, the way we just describe that is earthquakes were a lot simpler when we had less data. Yeah. So.
And we're back in that 5% zone again since this hit, correct?
Correct. Well, yeah. Every earthquake has that 5% chance type of level of being a foreshock, and the fact that it had foreshocks doesn't, as far as we can tell, really change that probability.
You said before
we should be able to provide an update on those aftershock probabilities within the next hour or so as the data from this 7.1 is analyzed. So for now, 5% is kind of the ballpark figure.
Right. It might go up a little bit if we see a lot. No, the only thing I was trying to say was that we don't get the 7s very often.
When's the last time you were a 7?
The same time, last time we had a 6. The last earthquake we had above 6 was a 7.1 Hector mine in 1999, so 20 years ago.
With your hands, could you show what a left lateral slip strike looks like?
Okay, strike slip means that you slip along the strike. So the strike gives you the orientation of the fault. If you're slipping parallel to that, it's horizontal. The opposite is dip slip, where you're slipping in the direction of the dip of the fault. So strike slip, if we move, let me see. I do my thumbs, I go like this, I now have to, on this side, I have to step to the right to find the rest of my thumb. But if I went here, I also would have to step to the right.
So one stays still.
So that's right. So, well, no, they both, that's all relative. Yeah. They move with respect to each other. And if they move like this, it's right lateral. If they move like this, it's left lateral.
And that's San Andreas as well, strike slip.
The San Andreas is strike slip, right lateral.
Northridge wasn't.
Northridge was a dip slip, moving up the fault, growing the mountains. So, in general, the faults are, many parts of California, we see this strike slip motion, and what it's leading to is a gradually extending of it. It isn't pushing us up or pushing us down, but it is sort of moving sideways and stretching out parts of the state.
Yesterday, you guys talked about a little bit about the lack of because we've basically been in a drought period for major earthquakes. Does this sort of confirm that, affirm that, or do you guys see it opening up to a new normal of some sort?
Right. This earthquake is still only one sequence. And so the fact that we've had the 7 after the 6.4 does not change. This is one sequence in that thing. We just, in geology, you know, we can look at the geology, we can look at the long-term pattern. We know that we need to have an earthquake of at least 6 or bigger every 3 to 5 years in Southern California. It's been 20. This 20 years without any can't be the long-term normal, just because geology shows us we need more than that.
Okay, last question.
In terms of the damage that could be expected in places like Trona and Ridgeway, can you just talk more generally about how much more susceptible these buildings are coming just one day after?
That's going to be an issue, that the building that was damaged in the first earthquake is then weaker and more likely to sustain damage in this earthquake. So, but that's completely hypothetical at this point. You really need to get the engineers on the ground. There were engineers, I saw stuff today that the engineers were getting out there to inspect the buildings. Hopefully they'll be there tomorrow.
Is there any description that you were able to get from the engineers or from the field teams yesterday about what they observed? Anything else?
Just some brief reports. There was a call earlier tonight. For example, there was a hospital that had been inspected and actually was found to be structurally okay. That was after the 6.4. So the engineers are there, and they have looked at some buildings. You know, clearly they're going to be looking at either the same buildings or other buildings now. But it's too early for any of that information to come back.
And remember that both the geologists and the engineers are physically looking at things, and it's a lot more difficult to do at night.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to...
Or you can find out more about the aftershock sequence?
Yeah. So we're going to... We need some time to kind of look at the data that's come in. We'll have a briefing again shortly.
Okay.
Hopefully, by 10:30 we hope, because I'd like to go home and, well.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Dr. Jones has had a really long day. We interviewed her here at the studio earlier today, and she has been making her rounds all over Southern California, talking about yesterday's event, and then this one eclipses that. But we did glean,
New information.
Some really great information. Number one, she did reiterate that it's unlikely that what's going on up there will affect any fault lines down here.
But it will not trigger a quake in any faults outside of the Ridgecrest area.
The thing to keep in mind, and she always says this, is there's no such thing as a set rule, but there's likelihoods, and it's less likely that that's going to trigger something down here. That's right. Important. There's a 5% chance that we could still get yet another quake that's even stronger than the 7.1 from this fault system.
Right.
So that exists. 1 in 20. But a 5% chance. And also, did you find that interesting when we got the Quake Alert system? We actually got to watch it work with them.
That was so fantastic because they told us in 26 seconds we're going to have a 5.7 magnitude quake.
You could watch the countdown. It was a 5.7. It said it was a 5.7 aftershock.
That magnitude is in question. That was not confirmed.
But we saw the waves moving and moving, and we saw the countdown. When that countdown hit them, it also hit us, and our lights started shaking.
We could see the lights shaking here in the studio. That was amazing. And again,
accurate.
Lucy Jones immediately was saying that didn't quite feel like a 5.7. It's coming out as a 3.5. So that part of it is still in question. But the fact that we watched the countdown for 26 seconds and then at 0, we saw the lights move in here, that was really fantastic.
And that's why that is vitally important as we get better at predicting, or not predicting earthquakes. I'm sorry I even said that, but doing this early warnings, alerting people that the waves are coming. We shut down trains, etc. Anything that could be damaged extensively from those waves that are heading our way. Very important technology.
Right. And then we should point out that these are the largest quakes that Southern California has had in 20 years. So these are very significant. Authorities are now reporting some injuries and damage from this big quake and it was felt not only here in Southern California, but also in Vegas, as we have heard throughout the night, and even in Mexico as well.
Los Angeles Fire Department, though, this is good news that they have searched the city. This is LA City Fire Department, and they said that they have not found any significant damage. So they're downgrading their alert back to normal. That's in the Los Angeles area. It doesn't necessarily mean outside of these areas that, as we've already reported, that there are some damage and injuries. And live pictures from Air 7 as it flies over Southern California. We are trying to get confirmation of a couple of places that might have some power outages. Stay tuned for that. We'll try to give you some verification on that.
And I want to go back to earlier we spoke to Leticia Juarez, and she was telling us that she had interviewed someone from Trona, and this is the area that's 8 to 11 miles away from the epicenter, from Ridgecrest, and that people were fleeing on Highway 178. And you might have seen earlier reports, the picture of the Highway 178 had that big crack in the road, and Caltrans moved in very quickly, and within an hour or two had repaired it. She was saying that same highway was had suffered damage, but this time it was a center divider, and that there was a significant crack.
Right. So a lot of concern about Ridgecrest. So we have somebody on the phone from Ridgecrest right now. His name is Chris. Chris, can you describe what you went through and how are you doing?
Yes, sir. I was walking down my hallway when the big quake started shaking, and it was going from the north to the south first for a few seconds, and then it changed and was shooting from the east to the west. And it was strong enough that I had to actually hang on to the wall to stay on my feet.
You had to actually hold the walls to stay on your feet, which shows that it was significant. How does this compare to what you felt yesterday?
It was much, much stronger.
Do you know of any damage that you received or your community has received? What is the reaction, if you know of it, of your neighbors, et cetera?
We're used to having earthquakes around here frequently. On the satellite image you show on your screen, you notice the mountains are dark around the valley here. That's because they're volcanic. And there's a geothermal north of Ridgecrest. And so we feel like 3.0 earthquake pretty regularly. People aren't generally worried about that. This was a real attention getter.
Right.
You're saying this one was a real attention getter. It was stronger than most?
Yes, indeed.
And you may have answered
the
this.
Navy does testing up here, and we hear explosions pretty frequently, but don't worry much about it.
I'm sorry, did you say that you have heard explosions, but you don't worry about it, but you heard some tonight? Is that correct?
No. The nature of the testing they do at the China Lake Navy, we hear odd things. We just don't worry about odd, but this earthquake was the strongest I remember ever valley my whole life.
I understand what you're saying, but you say that because of the naval bases there could be some explosions, et cetera. It's kind of normal for you to hear these things being so close to a military base. But I tell you what, it cannot be
work on the base.
Right, what they're doing on the base. So that's what he's trying to clarify. We're so sorry. The connection is a little bit difficult, but I think most importantly, have you heard from members of your community? Are you guys doing okay over there? Because there's so much concern. You just sat through a 7.1 earthquake that will damage any community in the United States significantly.
Most of the dwellings in the valley are single story, and a lot of them are from the 60s newer, so they're up to more recent code. The biggest concern here in the valley is that our wells are going dry because your aqueduct is taking all our water recharge from the Owens Valley.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Our connection is just not very good, and I know you mentioned the aqueduct. What is your concern again with the aqueduct?
Well, this Indian Wells Valley that has the naval base and a city with 1,000 people, our wells are drying up because Los Angeles is taking all our recharge water.
Okay, water issues and structural
and a town
integrity.
with 1,000 people, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Chris held on the phone.
30,000.
Oh,
30,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to say thank you to you because we know
Thank
you held on
Thank
the
you for
phone
your
for
time
so long.
and your true professional.
Right.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
You
We
bet.
hope you're safe out there. Thank you.
So much information to get to right
yes.
now.
Right now we want to go to Sid. He's at the Americana here in Glendale, and apparently many people felt it there. Sid, what are you hearing? What can you share with us?
Nerves are rattled. Let me bring in Aaron Johnson. You were at work when it happened. Where were you, and what did it feel like when it hit?
I was at a CPK in Glendale, and it's a large building, almost like a pseudo high-rise. And so the building did exactly what it was supposed to do. It started swaying, back and forth, but it was really disorienting, And I remember I kind of got down into a leg lunge, just wondering what was going on.
What did you guys do as far as the staff and then the customers that were in the restaurant at the time? Did you evacuate or just?
No, we didn't evacuate. I mean, it wasn't that extreme, but I mean, nonetheless, it was unsettling, and so we all just kind of made sure everyone was okay. We went to the guests, made sure that they were okay, and then just subsequently we just kind of went out, went through the night.
When you see how busy it is, and after what happened earlier today, is it kind of like, okay, for about 10-15 seconds it was scary, but now it's time to move on?
Actually, that's exactly what it was. I mean, it was that exact moment where we all realized, like, okay, well, it's over and done now. It's time to keep moving forward.
All right, Aaron, I appreciate you standing by. And that's been pretty much the sentiment from people we've spoken to here today. They felt it. It was kind of a rolling motion. But now, let's just get back to going back to dinner, or as one guy told us, I'm late for a movie. Reporting live in Glendale, I'm Sid Garcia, ABC7 Eyewitness News. Send it back to you.
All right, Sid, thank you. Those are good words that the person you spoke to used, disoriented, unsettling. I think we can all say that was the case for us.
It's interesting because this quake was so powerful, it's really extended. If you can envision where Ridgecrest is, and that is basically, if you know where LA is and Las Vegas is, Ridgecrest would complete the triangle. And so it's in that area of the desert where it could hit Fresno, Vegas, Southern California, and obviously Bakersfield. But all of these communities are feeling it. So we're getting reports like Carrie Skillman, our entertainment producer with George Binoculars, she said her parents felt it all the way down in way South Orange County significantly. Yeah. So folks are feeling it everywhere.
Well, we've heard reports in Las Vegas. We know that the game, the sports was interrupted in Las Vegas.
The Summer League.
We're hearing reports in Mexico. So this is, definitely felt throughout a very, very vast area. So we are also going to hear now from Eileen Frere. She is in Buena Park. Eileen, what can you tell us?
Well, Giovanna, likewise here in Orange County, we've run into so many people that felt this huge quake. Here in Buena Park especially, we have Hassan Petch. You were home with your mom when this hit, and what did it feel like?
It was very, I don't want to say calming, but it was much like a wave, like you're on a boat ride. It's very different from what we usually felt before, where we get these sudden jolts. So after the earthquake, it was just, I felt a little nauseous. I know a lot of other friends, they also felt nauseous as well, just because it was so long and swaying back and forth.
How long do you think it lasted? And you said you felt one and then a second one.
Yeah, the first one was kind of, quick, and then all of a sudden we started getting it constantly. I would say maybe it was about 45 to 1 minute.
And what was going through your mind when this was happening?
At first, when I felt the small one, I was thinking nothing of it. But then after the second one hit and it kept going and going, then my mother and I definitely jumped up, made sure we got into a safe area, just in case a big one did come. So we were getting prepared for that.
And you did feel the one yesterday here in Buena Park as well, maybe to compare them.
Yesterday's was definitely not as bad as today's. So today's was definitely much, much more worse.
And you said things in your house, you could see stuff moving and...
Yeah, we could definitely see things shaking. And that's why I was kind of worried, because after I started seeing more things shake compared to what it was yesterday, we wanted to definitely make sure we were safe and make sure we had cover. So, yeah.
And where did you go?
I go under the door, and then hold both sides just to grab, to be safe.
And any damage at your place?
No damage at all.
Now, you were talking, you've had some friends texting you as well. Maybe tell me, some in San Diego, you said, told you that they felt it?
Yeah, I have some friends in San Diego who said they felt the quake a few friends in San Francisco, they said they didn't feel nothing at all. So I know San Francisco is pretty far, so they probably wouldn't have felt it. But definitely people in like San Diego felt it.
And you were saying too that you are prepared in case the big one were to hit, or in case there was damage where you might have to be out on your own.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a lot of water bottles, instant noodles, Spam, things like that. Anything that's non-perishable that will last quite a while. And then we do try to rotate it out every few years to make sure everything is still fresh.
Right, and that's what everybody should be doing. And I think with these earthquakes, it's really bringing it home to go ahead and do that just as a precaution. You've been doing it even before yesterday's quake, though.
Yeah, definitely. We've done it for years because, again, we live in California, so we know there's earthquakes. So you never know what you can expect. So it's always better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Hassan. Thank you for waiting, and thanks for speaking with us and sharing that. And we're here live in Buena Park. Eileen Freire, ABC7 Eyewitness News. We'll send it back to you.
All right. Eileen Freire, thank you very much. Mark Brown now joining Giovanna, and what a day it has been here in Southern California.
Indeed.
The second day, the second earthquake. I apologize for my lack of tie. I was off today. I was actually at Dodger
You were at the
Stadium.
Dodger. You felt it
when this
there.
hit. We can talk about that a little later. We have Jory Rand right now. He is live in Valencia. He can tell us what things are doing at the moment there. Jory.
Yeah, and we're at Valencia Town Center, and if there's another briefing and you need to interrupt us, just let us know. We're at the movie theater here where a lot of people were inside when the movie struck. There was no official evacuation, but some people, many with small kids, got up during the middle of whatever movie they were seeing and came out here. Oftentimes, many of them did not come back. So we are here with Kyle, Dylan, Lucas. Kyle's actually the son of our sports producer, Dave Brill. Kyle, what was it like inside the theater?
Well, just like a couple days ago, everything just started to sway, and we immediately realized it was an earthquake, and so did everybody else, and the whole theater just began to like get up and walk out of the theater, and there wasn't anyone like screaming or anything, but it was honestly just surreal. Like we stayed in the theater, but there was this huge fan ahead of us above us that was just swaying, and like it was kind of scary, but yeah.
It sounds like it. So there was no screaming, but I'm sure people started talking and
yeah,
shouting.
like at least half the theater got up and walked out of the theater. And then eventually everyone started to come back, but there was still a bunch of more empty seats than there was before the earthquake hit.
Anything from management about whether to leave, whether people would get their refunds if they left?
Well, since we didn't leave the theater, we didn't really hear much. We just kind of like finished up the movie and walked back out. But
okay, so
yeah.
you're probably too young to have experienced Northridge. Probably weren't alive at the point. What has this been like for these last 2 days to go through earthquakes this size?
It's just been like an interesting experience. Nobody's been hurt that I've been around, obviously, in this area. So it's more just been like a weird, experience to feel what an earthquake was like, and hopefully not another big earthquake hits like the one in Northridge, because I've heard stories about how bad that one was.
All right, well, appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Thanks so much. Glad everything has turned out okay. We're going to take a little walk, guys. Over here, there is a group of folks eating dinner, and one of their daughters was actually in the theater at the time. We'll put them on the spot right now. Guys, can we talk about what happened? Can we talk about what happened during the during the earthquake? What you guys felt? Were you here?
We were here. Yeah. These umbrellas were like swaying back and forth, and I thought he was like tapping his leg and shaking the table. And I'm like, stop it. And he's like, no, it's an earthquake. And we just wrote it out, and it was kind of fun.
Yeah,
and
you said your daughter is in the theater?
She's in the movies
right now, yeah, actually.
And I think they evacuated the theater and got him out.
Put back in.
Yeah.
Did she texted you?
Yeah.
What was happening? What did she say?
Yeah, she asked us if we were okay, and we said we're fine, and she said, okay, we're going back in, and so that's where we're at now.
So it sounds like she might have been more concerned than
She was more concerned about us than we were with her, because, I mean, she's 200 feet away, so we were okay. We figured she was okay. So.
Yeah, okay. What has this been like to go through? Were you guys here for the Northridge quake? And
Yeah, it's been kind of fun because it was more like rolly, like you're on a boat, and it's kind of just rolly rather than that intense shaking.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit fun. I never felt ever that we were in danger, right? And then we were here yesterday in the area, the same thing. It just felt kind of fun, kind of rolly, and at no point did I feel like like we were in danger, like that intense shaking.
You guys know this is a 7.1?
Yeah, we looked it up.
Yeah.
The worse than yesterday.
It did feel like it went on for a really long
It was a little bit
time.
longer today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, everyone's okay?
Yeah.
Water's safe?
Yeah,
Good to hear.
everything.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, we first headed this way. We saw some posts on Twitter about mass evacuations outside movie theaters in the area. This one was not one of those, but again, many people left the theater at the time. We heard that big fan inside was swinging during it, but it seems like everybody here is okay, and we'll continue to talk to folks and check back in a little bit, but for now, we're live in Valencia. Jory Rand, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Jory, thank you for that. And we're going to check in with Scott Reif. He is in Air 7 HD, and he is flying over SoCal. Scott, what do you see? I know you're looking for damage.
And Mark, initially we got airborne out of Van Nuys Airport, and LA City Fire was up, LA County Fire was up. We came up into Santa Clarita. That would be a little closer, a little further north, actually to Ridgecrest. We're over Magic Mountain at the moment. We thought, we checked to see if maybe they suspended the rides. They have not. Everything seems to be normal here. And the good news is, as far as what we've seen, there was a couple reported power outages in the San Fernando Valley. We tried to spot them. We really couldn't. So if there are some power outages, they're going to be pretty small. We haven't seen a lot of response from the fire department or the police department, LA County and LA City. They did land their helicopters. Right now you see on Sky Map 7, once again, we're over Santa Clarita over the 5 freeway. And the good news is, as far as what we're seeing right here, is that we're not going to see much in the way of damage. We haven't seen anything like that. So fantastic news. We wanted to get a little further north, but the weather conditions are such. There's a little bit of a haze layer out there, sort of restricts us from getting into Ridgecrest that far up into the desert at night. But certainly good news from this vantage point as far as Los Angeles and Orange County and even Ventura County is concerned. We're not getting reports, and we would start to get those reports now if we had, fires or gas leaks or major responses, and that is not the case in this area. So certainly we're fortunate, but my goodness, the folks in Ridgecrest must really be unnerving for them. That's got to be extremely tough.
All right, Scott Reif, thank you very much for that live report. As you continue to survey Southern California, we're going to continue to keep an eye on this and update you on what has happened so far this evening. A second day, another huge earthquake in Southern California, just to reset and let you know where we are. The first one at 8:16, a 5.0. Another earthquake, the big one at 8:19. That was the 7.1 quake. And then a 4.7 at 8:22 p.m. being felt from as far away as Las Vegas, all the way to the ocean, and from as far south as San Diego up to Fresno and beyond. People all over experience it in different ways, mainly as a rolling motion, but the reports are coming in now from all of those areas, and now the damage is being surveyed throughout. There is some damage to the highway. It's 178 in that area. Is that correct, Giovanna?
Yes, in Trona. In Trona, we are under. Letitia Juarez told us earlier that Highway 178, there was some damage on the center divider there. That was the same highway that we saw damage at yesterday,
right,
and that Caltrans repaired pretty quickly. That we are understanding is now also damaged again. In that area. Also, we're hearing from Leticia that people were fleeing the Trona area, that there were reports of lost power there as well. So a lot happening. We are going to continue to follow the damage there, and we have crews on the way to Trona and to Ridgecrest to get more information on that. But to clarify a little bit more on the earthquake activity, Lucy Jones referred to it as an energetic sequence earlier tonight when she was talking. And she was saying that it would not be surprising if we see aftershocks in the magnitude 6 area. And we do know now, before we get to that, one more thing to say, we have had 52 aftershocks since that 7.1 quake, and the largest was a 5.5. Let's hear now from Lucy Jones, who spoke earlier.
By definition, because the 7.1 is the largest, we give it the name main shock. So yesterday or an hour ago, we were calling the 6.4 the main shock. It has now had an aftershock that's bigger than itself, and so we changed the name. And the 6.4 is now a foreshock, and that really large aftershock has become the main shock. So the fault is growing. We ruptured a piece in the first earthquake. We ruptured a bit more in the 5.4 this morning, and we're rupturing more now. It is moving towards the northwest, away from the metropolitan area, as far as we can tell. Trying to think if we've ever seen a situation with a 6.4 or 7 and then something even bigger, and I can't think of one. Not that it isn't possible, but I can't give you an example where it's happened before. What you're really worried about is, are we going to trigger something outside of this region?
Right.
Probably not. Okay?
Why?
Because we're too far away. The ability to trigger another earthquake is very spatially defined. So the most likely place to trigger it is at the same fault. As you go away with distance, it becomes much less